It was the 15th of August when the weight of my own questions finally broke open into something I could no longer keep buried. For months, I had been asking, quietly, cautiously, what really happens in those first 7 days when a soul leaves the body and steps into eternity. And when I dared to bring those questions to Jesus, what he revealed to me overturned everything I thought I knew about death, about heaven, about the mysterious bridge between the two. He did not give me a tidy answer wrapped in doctrine. He gave me a vision so alive, so overwhelming, that it changed how I see grief, love, and the mercy that waits for every person who takes that final breath. But before I could even begin to understand what he showed me, I need you to know where my heart was when I asked. This was not idle curiosity. It wasn't some theological puzzle I was trying to solve for the sake of clever arguments. This came out of raw human need, the need to know what happens to the people we love most when they slip beyond our sight. About a year and a half ago, I began to spend more time with those whose days were winding down. Ministry brought me into homes and hospital rooms where life was ebbing away. I sat beside families in their most sacred hours, and again I heard the same questions. What happens when the last breath leaves the body? Are they lost? Are they scared? Do they understand what's happening? Each time, my answers felt hollow, patched together from theories and well-worn phrases that never truly satisfied. I remember one conversation with a man named Frank, a cancer patient with eyes that held both fear and fragile courage. He asked me, "Jonathan, when I close my eyes for the last time, what will those first moments be like? Will I know where I am? Will I be afraid?" The tremor in his voice shattered something inside me, because in that moment I realized all I had were platitudes. I told him about heaven, about peace, but it wasn't enough. I saw it wasn't enough. That question haunted me long after I left his room. At night I lay awake thinking about my own parents, my friends, even myself. Every one of us will face that threshold someday. What if it isn't immediate paradise? What if there is a tender, necessary process of adjustment, a divine hand leading us from one awareness into another? The thought consumed me. So I buried myself in research. I read testimonies from those who had brushed against death, studied every account of near-death experiences I could find. Some spoke of light, others of tunnels or reunions, but still, a gap remained. No one described those first days, those fragile hours where a soul learns it is no longer bound to flesh. That silence gnawed at me. Around the same time, my own agent was diagnosed with a serious illness. Watching him walk through that uncertainty sharpened my questions. I found myself praying differently, less like a man reciting ritual, more like a child pleading for clarity. But my prayers were scattered. I talked, but I didn't wait to listen. I asked, but I didn't linger long enough to hear. The weight of all this began to spill into my daily life. On the set of The Chosen, as I spoke words about eternal life, I felt a dissonance between the lines I delivered and the turmoil I carried in my heart. How could I portray the face of certainty when inside I was wrestling with doubt about the very thing my character proclaimed? Even my grandmother's memory returned to me. She was a woman of unshakable faith, but even she had once wondered aloud whether the journey to heaven was instant or gradual. Her quiet musings echoed louder in my soul now than ever before. A hospice nurse once confided stories to me of patients in their final hours, eyes focused on invisible figures, lips moving as if in conversation with someone unseen. Others seemed to be receiving instructions as though being readied for a journey. These stories fascinated me, but they also deepened my ache. Were these glimpses of a process, a preparation? Were these fragile souls already being escorted step by step across the veil? The questions grew too heavy to carry alone. The breaking point came with a letter. A mother, raw with grief after losing her teenage son in an accident, wrote to me, "I need to know he wasn't frightened. I need to know he wasn't alone." Her words pierced deeper than any sermon ever had. I could no longer treat my questions as a philosophical exercise. They had become cries for comfort, for revelation. That night, I knew something had to change. I could not keep living with questions rattling in my chest like stones. I had to bring them before God with the urgency of a man who knew the answers might mend broken hearts. So I set a day aside. I fasted. I cleared space. I prayed not with half focus, but with my whole soul. That evening, anticipation and reverence settled over me like a heavy cloak. I wasn't seeking information anymore. I was seeking encounter. If Jesus would speak, if he would reveal this mystery, it would not just be for me, it would be for every Frank, every grieving mother, every soul aching to know what lies beyond the veil. I carried their faces with me into prayer that night, and with trembling honesty, I whispered, "Whatever you want to show me, Lord, I am ready." And as I drifted toward sleep with that surrender still on my lips, I did not know that I was stepping into the threshold of a vision that would alter everything. When my prayer finally surrendered into silence, the room grew heavy with a presence that was not my own. It wasn't the stillness of an ordinary night, nor the quiet that falls after words are spent. It was as if the very air had thickened, charged with something alive, waiting. My last whispered thought had been simple. "Whatever you want to show me, Lord, I am ready." And with that, my eyes closed, though it felt less like falling into sleep and more like stepping into another realm where time and place no longer obeyed the rules I knew. The first awareness was love. Not an emotion, not even a thought, but a substance, dense and radiant, surrounding me from every direction. Fear, the constant companion of my questions, dissolved instantly. I realized I had been ushered into a space between earth and heaven, a place designed not for testing, but for unveiling. And he was there, Jesus, not as the figure I had studied in scripture, nor the face I had portrayed on camera, but as the shepherd himself, the one who walks every trembling soul across the threshold of eternity. The moment I recognized him, tears burst unbidden, for his presence carried tenderness deeper than any word I could form. His voice met me like water quenching a thirst I had carried for years. "Jonathan, I have heard every question you've wrestled with about what becomes of souls when they leave Earth. I have watched your heart ache for those afraid of the unknown. Now let me show you how my love moves in those first 7 days of transition." His words carried weight, but not as a burden, more like a key unlocking a door that had always been waiting for me. He gestured, and I walked beside him into a landscape that seemed to shift between the beauty of the world I knew, gardens, rivers, light on leaves, and something immeasurably brighter, a radiance of creation unspoiled. As we walked, he spoke. Every soul, no matter who they are, no matter what path they walked in life, is given 7 full days of the most intimate personal care as they step into eternity. These are not days of trial. They are days of grace, days of orientation and comfort where earthly awareness gently gives way to eternal sight. I could feel the relief flooding me, the weight of Frank's question loosening its grip on my chest. "No one," he said, "is left to stumble confused or terrified. Each is received, surrounded, guided, and given exactly the time they need." Then Jesus showed me the very beginning of this passage. The instant a soul slips free of the body, they are not cast into silence or emptiness. They are met. Angels radiant with love surround them. At times, familiar faces, those who passed before, step forward, prepared long in advance for this moment. And never, not once, is anyone left to face that first breath of eternity alone. My heart broke with gratitude as he unfolded this truth. "The first day," he continued, "is about understanding. A soul must grasp what has taken place, and I will never rush that. They are brought to places of peace, of beauty, where fear cannot follow them. Some learn quickly, others need time, but all are given precisely what they need." He allowed me to see glimpses. A man embraced by his mother who had gone years earlier, guiding him gently into the new reality. A woman being led through gardens radiant with light. Every question answered patiently. Every fear lifted like smoke on the wind. No judgment, no hurried demand, only care as personal as a fingerprint. When Jesus spoke of the second and third days, his joy was unmistakable. "These are days of healing," he said. "On earth, people carry shame, regrets, wounds they never believed could be mended. Here, those weights fall away. Wounds are closed. Forgiveness is revealed in its fullness. Each soul learns how treasured they truly were all along." I saw men and women glowing as chains of regret dissolved, as years of addiction, depression, or despair were swallowed up in light. They became themselves again, not the fractured version life had beaten down, but whole, radiant, alive. And he spoke with delight. "No one enters eternity carrying the burdens they bore in life. Every soul steps forward free." It was overwhelming, and yet he was not finished. Jesus leaned toward me, his voice low with anticipation. Jonathan, these early days are not only for healing, but for awakening. I am preparing them to love as they never believed possible. And in his words, I knew I was standing on the edge of mysteries I had only just begun to glimpse. Jesus' words lingered in the air like a song still vibrating after the final note, and I sensed we were moving deeper. The light around us shifted, unfolding into landscapes of such beauty that my mind could barely keep pace. And then he said, Jonathan, what I am about to show you is the joy of reunion. He called these the fourth and fifth days, the days when souls are slowly, gently introduced to the great community of love that has been waiting for them. And what I saw broke me wide open. I witnessed grandparents holding children they had never met, soldiers embraced by brothers in arms long departed, friends falling into laughter that had been suspended for decades. Every face shone with recognition, every embrace with completeness. But Jesus was careful to explain. These reunions are orchestrated with wisdom. Love here is infinite, but I know the soul must never be overwhelmed. So they are introduced step by step, each meeting unfolding in perfect rhythm, giving time for gratitude, for tears, for the savoring of every connection. As I watched, the magnitude of love became unbearable and yet somehow bearable. A teacher I had once known appeared, surrounded by souls she had prayed for years after they left her classroom. A stranger stepped forward to greet someone who had once offered him kindness in passing, kindness that had rippled through eternity. Jesus whispered, every prayer, every small act of mercy, every moment of compassion creates a thread, and here all those threads weave together. And then he carried me further into the sixth and seventh days. These, he said, are the days of purpose, days when the soul is not only healed and restored, but awakened to its eternal calling. Every person, he told me, has been designed for a unique expression of love, a service that brings them the deepest joy. These days prepare them to discover it. I saw souls paired with mentors, those who had themselves once walked these 7 days, now radiant, now wise. Some were being shown their gift for encouragement, others their capacity for creativity, others still their ability to welcome and guide. Eternity was not static, it was alive, pulsing with collaboration, with service, with endless discovery. I could see the delight on their faces as they began to realize this was not the end of story, it was the beginning. People who had believed themselves insignificant on earth discovered that their every choice of love had weight here, shaping their eternal vocation. A woman who had once battled loneliness was now given a role of greeting and comforting others, her pain transformed into a wellspring of compassion. A father who had lost his child on earth was prepared to guide parents entering eternity with the same wound, now equipped to bring hope where despair once lived. Jesus said, suffering with hope becomes wisdom, and wisdom becomes a gift to others. But then I asked the question that had gnawed at me. What of those who lived in shadows, who carried guilt, who never believed? His face softened with unshakable compassion. Jonathan, these 7 days are grace for every soul. None are excluded. My love is not rationed according to earthly worth. Even those who turned away from me receive this gentle care. Many, in these days, experience my embrace for the first time without fear, without distortion. They discover they were held in my love all along. What I saw stunned me. Men and women who had lived fractured lives, some burdened with guilt, others hardened in disbelief, now wept as light surrounded them, their doubts dissolving in love that did not condemn but restored. Some needed longer, some needed gentler touch, but each was given precisely what they could bear. And in that moment I felt my own heart splitting wide open, because the God I thought I knew as judge was revealing himself again as shepherd, one who never abandons, one who waits with infinite patience until every soul can finally recognize itself as beloved. Jesus then looked at me with eyes that carried fire and tenderness at once. These days, he said, are not only about reunion and preparation. They are about remembrance, teaching each soul who they truly are. And every journey is written differently because I know each one fully. No two passages are ever the same. I realized then I was standing before a mystery deeper than I could ever convey with words. And yet I knew this was what people needed most to hear. That beyond the veil waits not terror, not judgment, not silence, but love, reunion, and purpose more radiant than the brightest sunrise. As Jesus continued unveiling the mystery of those 7 sacred days, the vision deepened. What struck me most was how carefully, how personally, each journey was designed. No two souls walk through the transition the same way. He said, "Jonathan, I know every person more intimately than they ever knew themselves. Their 7 days reflect that knowledge. Nothing is generic here. Everything is tailored." I was shown how some who had been quiet and reserved on earth were welcomed into intimate, hushed settings, gardens where only a few guides gently walked with them, ensuring peace and ease. Others who had been vibrant, social, and expressive were greeted by larger gatherings, a chorus of friends, family, and angelic companions, who matched the openness of their spirits. I saw that every personality was honored, every unique heart given precisely what it could hold without being overwhelmed. Even those who had doubted, who had resisted belief, were treated with exquisite patience. Jesus explained, "So many who struggle with faith have not rejected me. They've only been wounded by religion or by people misrepresenting my love. Here they encounter me without filters, without distortion. In this place, truth isn't argued. It's felt, undeniable, in the presence of perfect love." I saw souls once hardened by skepticism, now crumbling in tears, as his embrace undid decades of resistance. Their doubts didn't disqualify them, they only made the revelation more powerful when it finally arrived. And then, something that tore my heart open, people who had lived with deep limitations, physical, mental, emotional, now radiated with wholeness. A man who had never walked in his earthly life was running, his laughter ringing through eternity. A woman who had battled depression now glowed with joy so steady it seemed to light the atmosphere itself. Jesus whispered, "Every earthly wound is healed, every limitation lifted. This is who they were always meant to be." I couldn't stop weeping as I watched. But it wasn't only healing of the body or mind, it was revelation of purpose. Jesus showed me how, during these 7 days, each soul is given glimpses of the impact of their earthly life, how every act of kindness, every whispered prayer, every choice of love had rippled into eternity in ways they never could have seen before. I saw a woman shown how her simple smile toward a stranger one weary afternoon had prevented him from ending his life. I saw a father whose midnight prayers over his children had created a covering that shielded generations after him. Most souls, Jesus said, are astonished when they realize how much their love accomplished. They thought themselves small, but heaven reveals they were monumental. He also allowed me to see how nothing, no sorrow, no loss, no trial, is wasted. The hardest chapters of earthly life are reframed in eternity, their purpose revealed. A mother who had lost her child was shown how that searing grief had expanded her capacity to comfort countless others. A man broken by addiction discovered that his pain had been transfigured into wisdom, enabling him to guide others through darkness with compassion no textbook could ever teach. Suffering with hope becomes wisdom, Jesus said, and wisdom becomes a gift. Then he showed me something even more astonishing. Souls were not only reflecting on their own past, they were leaning toward the living. During their 7 days, they were given glimpses of their loved ones still walking the earth, and they were invited to intercede. I watched them lifting prayers, their love now unshackled from fear or weakness, targeted with perfect clarity toward their families. Jesus explained, "Love does not end at death. It grows stronger. It intercedes. This is why so many on earth feel a sudden peace, a sense of nearness during grief. It is real. Their beloved ones are still loving them more effectively than ever before. And some souls, Jesus showed me, found their calling as guides. Many, he said, find greatest joy in becoming greeters for those who will follow. Their own 7 days prepare them to welcome others, to walk with them as they were once walked with. This cycle of care never stops. It is love teaching love." I saw souls preparing for family members still alive, studying their personalities, anticipating their fears, readying the words and embraces that would one day ease their crossing. Love was not idle here. Love was always active, always preparing. But then came a revelation that broke me and healed me in the same breath. Those who died suddenly, in accidents, in violence, in trauma, they were not abandoned to confusion. Jesus' face grew tender as he said, "These souls receive even greater care. Specialists in healing surround them. They are given all the time they need. No one is ever punished for how their story ended on earth. Their trauma becomes their testimony, and many go on to comfort others because they know intimately what fear feels like. Pain becomes their qualification for compassion." I watched souls who had died in chaos now resting in arms of light, all traces of terror dissolving until only peace remained. Jesus then revealed how knowledge itself is poured out, not in overwhelming torrents, but in gentle streams. Souls are taught the mysteries of eternity, the vastness of creation, the interwoven fabric of every life, the eternal story that began long before their birth and stretches endlessly beyond. Their eyes widened with wonder, their hearts radiant as understanding dawned without strain. Knowledge here was not heavy, it was joy. And more, souls often reached back across the veil, practicing how to touch the hearts of the grieving they had left. I saw them learning to send dreams, to stir subtle signs, to impress love upon a broken heart. These are not coincidences, Jesus said softly. They are love finding a way, even across dimensions. The last thing he revealed before the vision shifted was this. At the end of those 7 days, every soul is gently taught how to let go, not of love, but of clinging. Earthly attachments are transformed into eternal trust. Parents who had worried endlessly over children discovered that love no longer needed fear to sustain it. Instead, it blossomed into intercession, a confident entrusting into God's care, knowing reunion was certain. Perfect love, he said, is not holding tight, it is holding open, and it never ends. As the vision carried me to its final crescendo, Jesus revealed the culmination of those 7 extraordinary days. I was shown what he called the graduation, not a stiff ritual, but a celebration bursting with life. Every angel, every guide, every loved one who had participated in the journey gathered in joy to welcome the soul into the fullness of eternity. I saw men and women who had entered those 7 days confused or weighed down with regret, now radiant beyond description, their eyes alight with clarity and peace. Their burdens were gone, their fears dissolved, their wounds transfigured. They stood as the fullest version of themselves, whole and unbreakable. This, Jesus said with a voice that seemed to reverberate through eternity itself, is resurrection. Not survival, not continuation, but completion, the fulfillment of everything they were created to be. And then he looked at me with such intensity that I felt my very soul trembling. Jonathan, what I have shown you is not a secret reserved for the few. It is my promise to every single person who will ever live, rich or poor, faithful or doubting, strong or broken. Every soul receives this gift, no exceptions, no prerequisites, no one is abandoned to fear. His words seared into me like fire, and I knew I could never hold them in silence. This wasn't meant to ease only my questions, it was meant to break chains of fear for countless others who live under the shadow of death without knowing the beauty waiting beyond. What came next shook me more than anything before. Jesus revealed that souls who had recently completed their own 7 days were speaking my name. 17 of them, he said, had prayed for me specifically in the past months, men and women I had met briefly, prayed with, comforted in small ways, or whose stories had crossed my path. Now radiant in eternity, they had asked him to let me see what they saw, so I could carry comfort back to the living. Tears blurred my sight as I realized love itself had interceded for me across the veil. Faces appeared before me. George, an elderly man I once spoke with about his fear of leaving his wife behind, now beaming with a joy I had never seen on earth. He told me, "Jonathan, I want you to tell everyone that those 7 days were the most loving experience of my existence. I was not leaving my wife. I was learning to love her better from eternity than I ever did in the same room with her." His words carried authority that pierced me. And then Sarah came, the mother who had once written me in desperation after losing her son. She stood before me radiant, her son by her side, and said, "Jonathan, every prayer I prayed in grief was heard. My love did not vanish into silence. It became part of his healing." Their testimony was not just for me, it was for every parent, every spouse, every friend still aching with loss. Jesus turned to me again, his hand heavy on my shoulder. "Jonathan, you were chosen to receive this because you carry a voice that reaches people whose hearts are breaking. This message is not optional for you. It is part of your calling. It will free the grieving from despair. It will release the fearful from terror. It will transform the way people live and love while they still have time." Behind him, the gathering of radiant souls nodded in agreement, their faces shining with expectation for how this truth would spread. He continued, "When people understand the 7-day transition, fear loses its grip. They will no longer live paralyzed by dread of death. They will grieve differently, knowing their loved ones are cared for, healed, and more connected to them than ever before. They will live differently, choosing love, choosing compassion, knowing every act ripples into eternity. Jonathan, this revelation is not information, it is transformation. His eyes burned with love and urgency. Go and tell them they have nothing to fear, nothing. Every soul is accompanied, healed, celebrated, and given purpose. My love never abandons, my love never ends. As the vision began to fade, George spoke again, his voice like a benediction. Jonathan, when you tell this story, you will not just be offering comfort, you will be handing people freedom. You will be giving them permission to see death not as an end, but as the most beautiful beginning. Sarah stepped forward, her eyes filled with tender fire. Remind them that their love continues, stronger than ever, that their prayers matter, that eternity is woven with every act of kindness. Jesus' final words echoed as everything dissolved into light. The 7 days are my promise to all, rich or poor, believer or skeptic, ready or afraid. Every soul receives this care. Tell them they are held. Tell them love never ends. And then I awoke, not groggy as from a dream, but electrified, every detail sharp and seared into me. I knew I had been given something I could never keep to myself. Even now, as I speak these words, the peace that washed over me remains. The fear that once haunted me has vanished, replaced by a strange anticipation, even joy, for the day I too will walk those 7 days. But more than that, I feel compelled to hand this peace to you. If you are grieving, take comfort, your loved one was cared for with infinite tenderness. If you are afraid of your own mortality, let that fear dissolve. Your transition will be guided, personal, and overflowing with love. So let me close with a prayer. Father, thank you for the gift of these 7 days, for the assurance that no soul ever walks alone into eternity. For the grieving, let your comfort fall like rain. For the fearful, replace dread with hope. Teach us to live with greater love, to forgive quickly, to embrace compassion, knowing every act echoes forever. In Jesus' name, amen. And if this truth has touched your heart, I invite you, stay connected. Share your story, speak of the ones you love. Let their memory be part of this testimony. Because love does not end at death, it only grows stronger, more radiant, more eternal. That is the promise I was shown, and it changes everything.